hey, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us here on BCTV, and we're super thrilled that you made some time out of your busy schedule to watch tonight. If you're watching live, thanks for joining us. I know it's a beautiful day out there, and I pulled these two out of the beautiful weather, so thank you guys. I'm so glad you're here. But I know that for some of you, you're out there and you're like, hey, listen, I couldn't see this live, and we had to watch it recorded. Totally get that. We're just glad you made some time to watch it, because everything that we do on BCTV is meant to invest in your life. God is at work in people's lives, in their marriage, or maybe at work, or even in their own personal health. We have a lot of people telling their stories about how Jesus redeemed them, saved them, and from a life of sin. And it's been a powerful time of just getting to celebrate what God is doing in people's lives. So thanks for joining us. Now, next week, we are not, actually the next 2 weeks, Tuesdays, we are not going to be having BCTV. So tune in at the very first week of June. We'll be back at it and looking forward to that. So 2 weeks off, but we're glad that you're with us here tonight. Now tonight's going to be pretty special. I like this. I love talking about marriage, and I love getting other couples that are a part of this, and I was so glad you guys said yes. So are you unmuted? Are you?
I am unmuted, yes.
Okay, so good. Okay. So this is Deven and Sarah, if you don't know them. And they're here to talk about marriage. How did you guys meet? There's people that probably are wondering, how did you two meet? Are you guys from here? Did you meet here? Like, not at Brighton, but I mean, you know.
Is this a trick? You know this story, don't you?
We met at Walmart.
Really?
So yeah, you really can't get anything at Walmart, including a wife. So.
Hey!
That's a nice short version. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll go with that.
Well, no, you gotta add a little bit more to that.
No, so okay, I was living in Kendallville at the time. Sarah worked for the street department, and she caught my eye at one point when she was out working in the street.
Oh.
She was painting curbs.
I was painting curbs.
I
Oh.
wasn't working in the street. She was painting curbs. Fire hydrant.
I guess we gotta,
Yeah.
let's specify that. Yeah.
Using my investigative skill, the girl that lived in the apartment next, but it was a family, and the young girl, she knew Sarah, and she mentioned that Sarah worked at Walmart as well.
Oh.
And she worked in the electronics, the film department, so I went in to develop some film, and I put my phone number on this. They called me when it was done, right? Well, Sarah called me off of that. She kind of stalked me at that point. So that's my story, and I'm sticking with that.
He handed me the envelope and said, you can call this number sometime if you want to, and then he gives me a wink.
Oh, we left out the wink.
Yeah.
I don't remember the wink. Oh, yeah.
Anyway, she did call. So
And you did call.
Yeah.
Was that surprising? Like, were you surprised that he was so bold? Like,
Yes.
I think he's like interested in me.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, went on a date, and I guess from there it's history. Yeah.
So how long? What year did you guys get married?
1999. Yeah.
Okay.
So we have 25 years next year.
So obviously you must have moved at some point from. Did you marry and start in Kendallville, or did you guys move up to where you're in LaGrange now?
Yeah. Well, I moved out of an apartment in Kendallville, and I bought a house outside of on Woodruff, Woodruff, and we got married shortly then after, and that's where we lived initially after we got married.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, so the content of tonight is something that I think, and I talked with you guys about and shared with the church on Sunday what we're going to be talking about. For those of you that may not know what we're going to be talking about tonight, certain occupations kind of create some tension, in the home. And I'm a pastor, and so my wife said, I'm never going to marry a pastor, and then she married a pastor. But she didn't know what it really fully meant to be in a pastor's home. She, I think it was more of the, I don't want to be on stage and I don't want to have to talk like he does and all that stuff. It's the stuff outside of hours, like work hours, is where things changed. Really, like everything became reality. And I'm sure law enforcement is in the same boat. So you may be watching and you're like, I've got a spouse that's like always on call or taken off because they got an emergency, or something's going on that's taking them after hours, and it's disrupting your marriage, it's disrupting the kids, and you may not have signed up for that when you first got married, didn't know that that was going to be happening. And you may be wondering, is there any hope? Can we get help? So that's the content of what we're going to be talking about. So you are in law enforcement. Is that something that you've always wanted to be in law enforcement? Obviously, you're working at Walmart, so that wasn't your
Well,
you were working at
I was visiting
Walmart.
Walmart, yeah.
Were you working? What were you doing?
At that time, I had just graduated college, was working, I think at
Or as
the,
a reserve.
yeah, I was working in reserve in Kennebell, in the Steuben County Jail is where I was working at.
Okay.
I was living in Kennebell as a reserve, trying to get a full-time job with the Kennebell Police Department.
Okay.
That's when we met, was during that time period.
Oh, okay.
So,
Now, so you told her that, look, I'm going into law enforcement? Is that,
yeah.
how did that
time.
conversation go? Like, what were your, how did you handle that, or what were your thoughts?
Well, I've seen the TV shows where you get the knock on the door in the middle of the night and your police officer, husband has been shot, and like, I never wanted that. And I always said, that's nothing that I wanted. I didn't want to marry a police officer. I found out he was, but he was cute, so I was like, okay.
That helps.
And hair.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah, haircut. So, yeah, it was like, okay, well,
Maybe I'll
we'll see
consider
what,
this, okay?
yeah.
So you guys get married and you were on the reserve. When did you, was reserve full-time or
Yeah,
part-time?
no, it was just like, it was unpaid, so you're just going in and getting experience, and, at that time, it was difficult to get into law enforcement. Back then, people liked the police, and, people who were police officers, they stayed there their entire career till they retired, so there weren't a lot of openings. Things have kind of changed over the years, but at that time, it was difficult to get into law enforcement, so I was just kind of waiting for my opportunity, as I was working as a reserve.
Okay.
And I was working full-time in the jail over in Steuben County.
Okay. So when you, now did the jail early on in the marriage, did that interrupt things, or how was that?
Well, when we first got married, he had switched, he had got hired on.
Yeah. So I had been hired on to Kennebell Police Department. I had gone to the academy while we were dating, and then, so I was a full-time police officer, at that point when we got married.
Gotcha, okay.
So we were.
So you were
We were
full-fledged?
married, and I was
Okay.
full-time law enforcement from day one.
Okay, so now tell us a little bit about what was life like for you, especially then. What was law enforcement looking like? Was this like a 9-to-5 job? Was this,
Yeah.
what was this?
So shortly after I got hired by Kennebell, we had an opening in an area drug task force that Kennebell had an officer in. He had retired, and I was able to get that position. So at that time, I was working undercover narcotics, and that was not a 9-to-5. It was whenever the job entailed, you would work basically.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was longer hours. It was surveillance. It was, you had informants that you were working with, so you were getting phone calls. And so basically, when Sarah moved in, we're married, she moves in, and then so she's dropped into that lifestyle of me coming and going and not having to study hours.
Gotcha.
So-
Do you remember that time? Like, was that a weird time? Like,
It was pretty weird, yeah. It felt like he was living two different lives at the time, just because he was like doing an undercover
Yeah.
thing and pretending to be one person, but
yeah.
coming home. But yeah, at home, it was just me, and so it was a lot more forgiving. I had a job.
Oh,
and
okay.
So having him gone in the evenings or weekends especially was a little difficult, and then we couldn't really go local places
Because of
was
the
his job,
position.
but,
Gotcha.
yeah, it was strange, but.
So how long were you in that role?
So I was doing that, before we got married, and then it was right at probably about a year while we were married that I was doing that as well. Maybe a little over a year and a half anyway. And then she came to me and basically said that she didn't like it.
Really?
Well, I said to him, you're pretending, but you're still walking the walk and talking the talk, but, you get to come home and you get to be a Christian and go to church and all this stuff, but then on you know, he's not doing drugs or he's not drinking,
Sure,
but
absolutely.
he's like pretending that he's doing these things. So
Yeah.
he's going out and he's hanging out with all these like shady people and, you know, I don't know, doing his thing.
Was it like,
and
you were-
it was like, okay, so if we're gonna start a family, like, how is this two separate life thing gonna work? So,
I mean, were you thinking were you thinking, hey, I like this role, I wanna continue to do this for a while?
Yeah,
or-
I mean, yeah, I've always liked, you know, the law enforcement
Yeah.
type thing, and to work narcotics, yeah, because it was, I mean, you could come and go, and you kind of did your thing, and so, yeah, it was, as far as the work went, I really enjoyed it.
Gotcha,
Wasn't something I thought I would do like my entire career, because I was
Sure.
just getting started, you
sure,
know, like only 2.5 years into my career, so.
gotcha.
But no, at the time, I did not want to, give it up.
To give it up, and you're because you're thinking more next step, because you're already
Right,
thinking,
yeah.
we wanna start a family.
yeah, we
And
had talked
where-
about it and, you know, I knew he loved his job, so it was difficult, but, you know, I was like, okay, we gotta talk about this because I don't know how this is gonna work.
Yeah, how is this gonna work if
Yeah.
you continue on this kind of
Yeah.
a role? So that was that hard for you to have that I mean, you know, we're getting older,
oh,
so,
yeah,
you know,
well-
do you remember back then, like, having this
Yeah.
was that a stressful?
Yeah, because I was a very agreeable person when we first got married. He didn't think I had an opinion about much because
You
I was
just were
just like,
sure,
fine,
Yeah.
that's great. Whatever you wanna do, wherever you wanna go, I'm tagging along.
yeah,
I like that, yeah.
yeah,
So-
it's always nice, right? Yeah,
So yeah, it was a difficult conversation because, you know, I didn't wanna have that, but also thinking of, like, I had just become a Christian, well, when I was pregnant with our first son.
Gotcha.
So, I committed my life to Christ at that time,
sure,
and I was like, okay, like, if I'm a Christian and this is the life I wanna live, like, is this the right thing to do? I don't know, like, so I
gotcha.
talked to him.
So you had that conversation, and so what was your, if you remember, you know, back then, what was your reaction to all that? To hear this, my wife is feeling this can't keep going like this, you know, this
Yeah.
is a dream, I'm loving this, you know.
Yeah, well, just the fact that she came to me, you know, with these concerns and was concerned at that time, you know, I knew it was something that I needed to, I wasn't gonna put my job before my marriage.
Sure,
You know, I mean, that wasn't gonna happen.
sure.
So, I just started looking for different avenues at that time of something I could transition into.
Gotcha. Same department, but
Yeah.
just something else.
Well, no, actually a different department.
Oh, even a
So,
different
yeah,
department.
my goal was always I always wanted to work for the state police.
Oh,
And so, it actually, I mean, it was a blessing that she came to me when she did, it was good timing. So, basically, I started the application process, I continued doing the job that I was doing, I started the application process for the state police. So it was probably, you know, still another 6 or 8 months until I went through the hiring process with the state police, was offered a job with them,
okay.
and then left Kendallville, went to the academy, you know, which then, of course, meant I was gone for 24 weeks.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I just transitioned into a different job, which led me back to uniform patrol
Gotcha.
for a period of time.
So now uniform patrol, what exactly does that mean for people that aren't understanding, you know, much of what, is this, again, what, is this a certain
Yeah.
shift, is this a territory? you
Yeah,
know?
it was, I was working midnights, I was on the toll road, it was a rotating shift, so, holidays and weekends were pretty much always working.
Okay, so that
Yeah.
changes things up a little bit
Yeah,
too.
yeah, so, yeah, during those initial years, yeah, it was,
A lot of call-outs and
yeah, well,
holidays and.
you know, at that time, there wasn't any call-outs, because I was just, but it was very structured. You know, I had a schedule, we knew when I would go to work, and in working uniform patrol, you don't get call-outs. You know,
Okay.
there's no, it's like you go, you do your job, you know, I was on a toll road, so all you're doing is
Driving back.
and forth writing speed tickets. So that's pretty much what I did for, you know, 2 or 3 years. But it was, but for Sarah, it was nice, and for the family, it was, because we, you know, we had our first and second child during that period of time.
Okay,
So we knew when I would be working.
okay.
And Sarah was not working at that time. She was, you know,
Did you plan to be more of a stay-at-home mom, like while the kids were?
I don't remember. It was probably something we talked about early on in marriage.
Yeah.
Because we talked about kids and how many we wanted to have.
But yeah, but she was all the way
and all
through.
that. But
and she
yeah,
always-
we ended up,
It ended
I
up
was
being that.
just glad to do it.
Oh, sure.
At that point, yeah.
So let me jump in here real quick. So you make this change. It ended up working out really well, which praise the Lord, that's great.
Right, yeah.
It may not have, and
Right.
you know, and so what if the one spouse is in a situation like you were in?
Mhm.
Kind of you're evaluating, you're like going, I'm gonna have to say some really hard things.
Right,
Like, are there some things that maybe we could, what if somebody is in a position like that? Like, they're feeling, they're like, I don't see how we could keep this pace going like this.
right,
But I don't wanna, you know,
right,
ask him or her to
Yeah.
change,
Yeah.
you know, because, you know, what are some things that maybe you would suggest for somebody, if they're in a position like that,
yeah,
where it's almost like I have to have a hard conversation with
right.
somebody, is there anything that you could suggest that maybe for them to consider, you know, before they have that conversation, or?
Well, I mean, first of all, we all have to remember that we're sinners.
Mhm.
And, him and I both have committed our lives to Christ, so
Yes.
that's one helpful thing.
Yeah,
And then an honest conversation is also helpful, so if you are thinking like, this is tough, like, I don't know how I can do this, but you're not saying anything, or you're not communicating it to your spouse, that's gonna be tough, because
Mhm.
he is not a mind reader, he can't even
Yeah, I bet,
understand
I bet.
signals.
Man.
Sometimes.
Say it.
So, you know, if things are hard on me, he's not necessarily gonna see it, because he is busy and he's got a lot on his
Yeah.
mind with his job, and,
Yeah,
you know, so if I don't like say the words, then he might not understand it.
sure.
So,
I'm sure a lot are suffering in silence,
right.
not
right,
saying a word,
Right,
and their spouse maybe isn't seeing it.
yeah.
And then what that does is possibly even create some bitterness
yeah.
in some people, like, you know, you don't care about my feelings, and it's not even maybe the case.
Right,
It's just they aren't aware.
yeah.
What is, maybe, I don't know if you remember how she approached it, but is the way she approaches you and talks to you, does that make a difference on how you're willing to, or are you just naturally, I love this woman, I wanna, you know, or does it matter how she approaches you? If she just, you know, is on the
Yeah.
floor just in a,
Yeah.
you know, pile of tears, you know, pool of tears, it's like, what's wrong, you know?
No, I mean, I try to be sensitive to her emotions and feelings, certainly. But, you know, I think from what I remember, you know, the way that she framed it, it wasn't like, there was like an ultimatum, like either you do this or I'm moving out. You know, we're gonna get a divorce if you don't, you know, we talked early on that divorce was never gonna be spoke. That wasn't an option in our relationship, in our marriage. So I think, yeah, in the way that she approached it, it wasn't like, you're gonna do this or else. It was like, hey, this is my feelings, this is, and like I said, I really liked the job I did. I mean, I don't know if I was visibly upset when we had that conversation or not, but
He was.
Yeah.
not upset like mad, but like
Sure,
emotionally. because I
disappointed,
did,
like
yeah,
sad.
disappointed, like,
Yeah.
Sad, yeah.
you know.
Because this is like a joy. It's like, I love this,
Yeah,
and now you're
so-
like wanting me to shut that chapter. And
So yeah, I think that there was a lot of that, just in the way that she just explained to me how she was feeling with it.
yeah,
And then me accepting that, you know, okay, I'm not gonna put my job before my marriage. And so I need to, I know not everybody's gonna have that same opportunity, because maybe they don't have where they can change to something else, but if we can just look for ways that we can, I guess, cater more to our spouse at that point to help them through that period of time, and
absolutely.
we can change how we operate a little bit
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
appease them more.
I've seen people say, I've heard people say that, you know, they're working a certain shift, and that shift was just in conflict to normal life, and they're like, you know, they had an option of changing, working another shift. And that again, like you said, options help, but there may be some positions out there, like my position is a day position, but it's interrupted at night. So then I may not have options except for, you know, either I change the role, and if they even have a role for me to take, or I have to look for something else. So yeah, these are real challenges that people are in that moment. So
And
go ahead.
he still gets called out still today, so it takes a lot of, like, I know what Tiffany feels like,
Sure.
because there's been, and it seems to happen when there's an event, if we have small group, or if we've had different things like that, people over to the house,
Yeah.
he's like, I'm not gonna make it.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Well, let's go there in that season of life. So you've changed your job to now you were patrolman, so you're on the toll road. That was it sounds to me that it was kind of still interruptive. You know, it interrupted a lot, like your weekend when maybe kids are out of, well, I don't know, they were little at that point, so they may not have been. So you might have actually been able to, during that phase, maybe adjust a little bit. The kids are, well, I don't know, how old was Declan maybe when you were on the toll road? Was he in school yet, or?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
Declan
two were
also
little.
were both little
Gotcha.
during that period of time.
So then you shifted out so that you could adjust at least at that point to his schedule.
Yeah.
Because you weren't working, you were staying home with the kids, and they just kind of functioned as that's our work schedule.
Right.
So then you shifted out of that. What led you to shift out of that role?
Well, I stayed in regular patrol for about 6 years, and then I still on patrol, but I was on our we had methamphetamine hit the area, so for a period of time I was on the meth lab team, and then that was when things really turned upside down again, because that was just constant call outs. There wasn't much of a routine at all on schedule wise, so.
And it was dangerous and scary.
I did that for about 2.5 years, 3 years, something like that. And then I had got promoted to investigations. And then investigations led to a little more of a schedule, because that was Monday through Friday, but that does open you up to call-ups. So you have your weekends and you have your holidays off, as long as the phone doesn't ring.
As long as the phone doesn't ring, okay.
So it was a little more, so it was nice having the Monday through Friday, the day shift hours, but then it led to more call-outs.
Gotcha.
From then on. So that's pretty much
Where it's been since then.
Since then, yeah.
And you've changed roles in the organization, but that's the pattern of.
Yeah.
So now back to what you were saying. So now the call outs, was that okay, these call outs, or was it, like you talked about, there were some scary times, and then
Right, yeah, I mean, it's definitely been some scary times for me, but, typically the call outs are, still a bother. I mean, they're almost always gonna be a bother, especially when you've got things going on, and we've got 4 older children, and they've got school events, and they've got programs, and they've got times where they finally come home or whatever, and
Sure.
so it is a bother, but it's just something that we know, okay, well, that didn't work out.
Sure.
So
Sure.
just have to kind of roll with that. But.
Yeah. So what were some things that you were, or maybe you had to be more intentional about? How do I keep the family together, with this kind of a schedule?
Right.
And maybe things were crossing your mind. I need to make sure I missed that event because I got called out. I need to make sure I follow up or check in. Maybe there were things that you did to try to kind of follow up. But what were some that go ahead.
Yeah, well, I would just say that, we were very fortunate in the fact that Sarah was home. She was not working. She was home with the kids.
Yeah.
And so that really allowed me to build my career, to get to where I am today, all these, I never would have done it without her, because she was able to manage the home. The house, well, you have 4 kids, so the house isn't always clean.
Yeah.
But it's clean, but it's a mess at the same time.
Sure.
Because you have 4 kids that are tearing everything up.
Yeah.
So we were fortunate in that aspect, because I could pick up and go. I could go to training for a week at a time, and I could do all of these things. I had that opportunity because I knew that I had Sarah, you know, she was always there at home,
Mhm.
with the kids. But, yeah, in the same sense, when I would be gone for extended period of times, then obviously the kids would get, you know, more and more wound up because dad's not around, and so I'd come home to a wife with a little bit frazzled by having to deal with 4 boys all day long
Yeah.
without me around.
And we homeschooled too, so that
Yeah.
was,
Even more so, yeah,
Yeah.
you're like, oh yeah.
So you're not even kicking them out of the house for a period of time.
Gotcha. So how did you make sure that you didn't get bitter or angry, and maybe that was a hard, maybe a lot of prayer and a lot of talking yourself through that.
yeah.
How did you navigate through all that? Just because you are the one at home, you are the one keeping kind of everything together while he's off saving the world, which is great. We need
Right.
people to do
Right,
that.
right.
But you're still, I'm here and I'm doing this. How did you?
Right. I think the times that I managed it the best was when I was in the Word
Gotcha.
and that I was praying as well, because, you know, my fear at home or loss of sleep or whatever isn't gonna make this situation better.
Sure.
Me being angry at home isn't gonna make the situation better.
Gotcha.
So, like, there was a lot of prayer of things, you know, and there were situations where I knew that God had protected him,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew he loved me.
Mm-hmm.
My husband loved me.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, so what am I gonna choose to do here? So my attitude is always better about anything
Sure.
when I'm in the Word, but that really does help. I
Gotcha.
mean, the prayers when I'm afraid or when I'm upset about things, I'm like, okay, you know, get a hold of my mom, get a hold of his mom, just be praying because
Yeah.
he's having to go out again.
I was gonna ask you about that. Was family, so when he's gone or, you know, whether it be extended or, you know, like that small group, or
Yeah.
we have a birthday party and he's gotta go.
Yeah.
Did you have a support system like your parents and in-laws?
Mhm.
Did they just kind of naturally fill in that gap in a way,
Yeah.
or?
Yeah, we are blessed to have family around us. Both of our parents have never lived more than a half an hour away from us, so we were able to, you know, I remember one night I was home with the boys, the two older boys. They were real little, like maybe 2 and 3, and in the middle of the night I heard this big like crack on the top of the house, like this big thump, and I was like, what was that?
And he wasn't home.
He wasn't home.
Gotcha.
And so I called my parents, I called my dad. He drove, they were probably 20 minutes, half an hour from us, and he came out, flashlight, checked everything out. It wasn't anything that he could find, but it does help to rely on family and to have family or close friends or whoever to be able to call, and
Gotcha.
you know, so they did fill in
Gotcha.
some.
So that helps.
Yes.
Being able to, and unfortunately, some people don't have them nearby.
Yeah.
So did you feel like did you ever talk about this? Like, was this a conversation that you just had with God? Like, you know, he's, you know, protect my husband, he's gotta go, but now this is back onto my shoulders because which is great. I mean, you're thankful.
Yeah.
I know as I'm the one, I get to go off. Like the other day, it was funny. So it was over a holiday or something, and I got called out and for a scenario that was needed, and my daughter was home and she wanted to play a game, and they were waiting for me. So they're texting me, but I'm not looking at my phone because I'm trying to be paying attention, you know, so I'm not looking at my phone. And they're like, where are you? What are you doing? Get home, we want to play. And it's like, you know, but they're like, there's dad going again. They're waiting on me, and it's like, and I'm doing my thing.
Yeah.
So maybe Devin, we're doing our thing. We're out, got a job to do. So do you talk to somebody about these feelings of frustration when it's like, you're dealing with it, or was it just with God?
Probably in the early days, it was a lot of my mom, and she was very understanding of that. My dad, he didn't have he had like a 9-to-5 job, and so there was not something she understood, but
Sure.
I mean, she also knew the Lord, and so she was encouraging about it. So
Yeah.
thankfully I had a sound person to
Yeah.
kind of bounce things back and be like, well, you know, he's working hard, and
Mhm.
point out, you know, he's providing for your family, and he's a good dad, and when he's home, and, you know, he spends time with the boys, and he goes out and he does all the boy things, and, you know, he tries, and he
Yeah.
works hard, and he
Yeah.
does a lot for us, so
Yeah.
that helped, that there was somebody
Sure.
positive speaking back in, because it could have very easily been that I chose somebody who spoke negatively about the situation,
Sure.
which could have sent it the other direction.
Absolutely fueled
Right,
even greater fear and
Right.
bitterness and anger
right.
and I can't believe that guy, you know. Yeah, we do have to be careful
Yes,
who we're letting
yeah.
speak into our life and stuff like that. Wow. Okay. So now you deal with the birthday without him because something's happening, and we're at this point. Do the kids? Or let's talk about your marriage. So did you try to make sure, while that creates a lot of craziness sometimes, you know, with life,
Yeah.
what did you do to keep a close relationship with your wife? Kind of high five her as you go, or was, you know, what did you do? Because a lot of guys just kind of, hey, got a job to do, you know, suck it up. This is what we do, and here I go. How did you kind of make sure to kind of fuel that marriage relationship while?
Yeah. I don't know. Well, I think in a sense.
Or maybe it's what you do. Or maybe it's
Well,
not already natural.
Yeah, I mean, I like my job.
Mm-hmm.
I do. So when obviously getting called out can be an inconvenience, but typically when we're going and we get there and we're working and you're with the other guys and you're doing the job and you're doing what you do, you know, sometimes it's hard to say, okay, I need to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I transitioned more into like a supervisory role over the time, I still like to be there for those things, but I don't always need to be there for maybe as long. And so, you know, knowing that I've got a family at home, and when I do get called out with my job, if my shift goes long or whatever it is that I'm doing, knowing that, hopefully she knows that if I'm not home, I need to be there for the period of time that I'm there, and then I leave as soon as I can.
Yeah.
You know, cut it off and come home. So hopefully that's translated over the years. I think with the conversations that we've had, or, you know, I always typically, to some extent, tell her what it is that I'm doing. Some things nobody wants to hear.
Sure.
So, but I think just the open lines of communication.
Good.
Of what it is, when I'm going to be home, you know, keeping her updated, not just
Yeah, kind of like
going dark and not
Yeah.
responding to text messages or phone calls.
Yeah.
If I'm in an opportunity like you're describing, sometimes you can't. But as soon as I can, I think that she always knows that, yeah, there's many times that she texts me and I don't respond. But when I have the opportunity, I do. So I guess
So
not
communicate.
not ignoring her communication.
That's really good.
Yeah.
That's really good. Making sure to communicate as often as you can when you're gone,
Yeah.
and so that because I don't know, maybe that helps you to kind of feel like I'm in the moment with him. It's not like, even though we're apart, you know, I'm here and he's there.
Yeah.
We're in this story together.
Yeah.
I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Spouses saying, talk to me, let me be part of the story. I may not understand it all,
Yeah.
but help me to be part of the story, and that.
Yeah, that is a big thing, because I was gonna say, I don't know if you're like regular date time or like what answer you're looking for, because we just really don't do that. We don't prioritize that enough maybe, but
Sure,
we do communicate well.
sure,
I mean, I think we communicate pretty well.
sure.
You know, if we need to talk things through,
Yeah.
we make sure that we make the time to do that. So,
Yeah.
you know, we might not go on regular dates or whatever. but
And I
we
think
have
that's
that
good for
time at
people to
home.
know that.
Yeah.
Because it's not like this. I mean, I've been to the marriage retreats and going, you gotta go every week. And I'm like, you don't live my life, dude. Punch him in the nose. You know, it's like, I know we're not supposed to, but I just want it. And it's like, I can't live that
Yeah,
life.
yeah,
And it's like, and then it almost feels like I'm failing.
yeah,
And it's like, because we're not going on a date night every week. And
Yeah.
it's like, sometimes you just can't, it's life.
yeah.
But I like the idea that you're saying is I try to include her, or like call her, text her, respond to her.
They'll
I
call you
like,
on the way home.
or call you on the way home.
Something, yeah,
And just being a part of that.
yeah,
Especially at 3 in the morning, you know, those are
Right,
pretty
yeah.
scary calls
Some keep you
too.
awake while you're driving.
Or I don't know, would you prefer that? Like if it's,
If I hadn't heard from him and if it was a situation that needed to, yeah.
even
I mean,
at 3
there's
o'clock in
been-
the morning,
there's
just let me
been
know
times where
you're
he's-
okay.
I'm like, just call,
Yeah,
a few times. but
Sure.
Not,
not all the time.
yeah, not all the time.
So that's awesome, but I love that, communicating and keeping the other spouse a part of the story as to what's going on, so that at least they're a part of that. So now what about the kids? Like, did the kids ever, and again, I know they're not here to speak for themselves, and I know our time is getting, gonna be coming to an end here. Did the kids have any, like, regrets, like Dad missed this, or, I guess this isn't more a pulpit show or anything like that, but I mean, like, was there anything like that, or did it just kind of roll with the punches because?
That's all they ever knew.
Gotcha.
So I think if he had like a 9-to-5 job, they'd be like, oh, this is different. But that's all they ever knew was, sometimes he was, being homeschooled, you don't know, like, I come home from school, Dad should be home.
Yeah.
Like, Dad might have been home in the morning.
Yeah.
And then gone all evening.
Yeah.
Or whatever. They don't know what Saturday is because, every day is a Saturday.
Every day is a Saturday.
But yeah, so they were pretty easy, and Deven was really honest about his job and what he did. And
Sure. Was that something you would talk to them a lot
Yeah, I
about?
was told the stories, just,
okay.
just things that were going on, or what we did, or what we saw, or the people we interacted with, how crazy, or, who they
Gotcha.
were, the personalities, and so I would tell them to, talk about that, what it was that I did, and why I wasn't home, or where I went, but that's a good question. I guess I've never asked them, how did that affect you over the years? I don't know.
Sure,
I mean, they all seem like they're pretty
yeah, they
level-headed guys.
Yeah.
They're very low-key like me, so.
Sure. And it may not be, there may not be an impact, just like you said, it's been now homeschooling does create a little bit of a uniqueness, because we also homeschooled. And so having that freedom to be able to, I'm at home this morning, and so I
Yes.
get to spend time with them.
Yeah.
Where if they were going to school,
Yeah.
and I was home, but then we didn't interact with each other.
Yeah.
So that does create a uniqueness there, but the point is that you're still being pulled away, and it could potentially be pulled away during very important times.
Yes.
So like, I don't know how, were there times, and I like what you said earlier, as the older you've gotten, there are things that you start, maybe the position affords you the ability, I don't necessarily have to do that or stay that late, or, you can start making those adjustments. Young guys, we got the pressure on our shoulders, and we're like, we gotta take care of family. I got a job to do, and that takes care of you. So there's a lot of pressure on everybody involved.
Yeah.
So, man, this is good, because you guys got a great family, and it's been fun to watch you guys just, grow as a family. I've got one that's he's a junior and gonna be a senior, and then that's it. They're all gone. You have, you're graduating your third.
Our third, and then our youngest is a freshman this year.
So a couple more years, and you guys are in that
same
empty
boat.
nest and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I know you bought a business, which a tree farm. So in like even that, I see your pictures that it seems that you get to share that together. No, it's still work, but
Yeah,
it sounds
but
like.
they love it.
I was gonna say,
Boys
it looks
love
like you
it.
guys have a lot of fun when you're doing it.
Yeah, it's been a good family adventure, I guess.
Yeah, so little things like that, creating, and maybe even just creating moments together as a family,
Yeah.
When you're pulled apart many times
Yeah.
because of career, is important.
Yeah.
Some guys aren't thinking about that, or some spouses aren't thinking about that. How do we offset
Yeah.
so that we can set it right, when
Yeah.
everything gets so discombobulated?
Yeah.
So let's recap. So if you're watching here tonight, we've talked a lot about a lot of different things. So we need to make sure that when it comes to a spouse that's always being pulled away, being able to keep that healthy line of communication. I do like the 360 app, at least for my family. They can, I may not have been able to communicate like we're in the middle of something, but they at least know where I'm at. And it's like, oh, okay, or he's driving, and then I can give him a call and stuff like that. I like that, and that helps out tremendously. But communication, I think, is really, really good.
Yeah.
Creating moments together as a family, and even when